Welcome to a new video in international trade, and we are moving on to the second module, which is developments in trade theories. We have already learned some trade theories in the UG level. We learned that there are classical trade theories, there are modern trade theories, and classical theories are absolute advantage theory and comparative advantage theory. And comparative advantage theory is the most important classical theory of trade, followed by Heckscher-Ohlin theory. And in this module we are going to look at the developments in the trade theories after the classical theories of trade. As a first part, we have offer curves. Offer curves are in fact the international demand curve. These are referred to as the reciprocal demand curves of nations. This is used in international trade, international economics extensively. Offer curves are measured for the nations, not for the people, not for the individual consumers. These are calculated for the nations offering as export, and they receive something as import. This is in fact called the mutual international demand curve, and this was developed first by Edgeworth and Marshall, and later on this offer curve analysis was associated with the name of J.S. Mill. So before that, Edgeworth and Marshall developed this concept of offer curves. And what does offer mean in the offer curve analysis? This is the offering of commodities as export for import. So each nation is involved in international trade. They export commodities and they import commodities. So how much they receive as import for their export. So is there any advantage for that nation? Is there any limit, any disadvantage for that nation? So we will measure the advantage of the nation from trade using offer curve analysis. And offer curve analysis is also using the terms of trade, whether the nation is gaining from trade or losing from trade. So for that we have the examples of textile commodities and petroleum commodities. So textile commodities is being suppose textiles products are being exported for petroleum. But petroleum products are petroleum crude oil is being imported. Textiles are being exported. So we just want to look at the offer curve analysis for the commodities of textile and petroleum crude oil commodities. So this shows how much a country supply for the import of the commodity. That means how much a country is ready to give for importing something. So then we will understand whether the nation is gaining or whether the nation is losing, and before reaching the two nations in equilibrium. So let's look at an example first. So we have India and United Arab Emirates as the two nations involved in mutual trade. As India specializes in textiles, as India have a comparative advantage in that industry, in that sector. At the same time, United Arab Emirates specializes in the production and export of crude oil, on which they have the advantage. Offer curve incorporates both demand and supply. Demand is met by import. Demand is shown through importing the commodity. In India's case, India import crude oil from United Arab Emirates. Similarly, supply is met through export. Supply is done through export. Supply is shown as export. This is the offer of the nation. India's case, it is textile commodity being exported to United Arab Emirates, and in back India receive crude oil from United Arab Emirates. So how does the offer curve of a country derive? Offer curves are derived from that country's production possibility frontier. We have in our case India and United Arab Emirates producing in textile commodities and crude oil commodities. India specializes in textiles and UAE produces and export crude oil commodities, crude oil. So as India has advantage in textile sector, United Arab Emirates have the advantage in crude oil, as they have the crude oil reserve in their nation. So what important here is both nations need both commodities. Take India's case. India need both commodities for consumption. We need export. We need a textile commodity. At the same time, we need to import crude oil. So since India have the advantage in textile, and it has the comparative advantage in producing and specializing in textile sector, it can export textile and it has to import crude oil, as we need crude oil, as it is an essential commodity here. So let's look at the offer curve of a nation. Take again India's case and United Arab Emirates case. So India's export is measured along the horizontal axis X. It is the quantities measured are 5, 7 and 10. This is the quantity exported by India. India's export is textile, as I said. So India exports to United Arab Emirates. In return, United Arab Emirates export the crude oil, which is measured along the vertical axis, and the commodities quantities of crude oil measured along the vertical axis Y axis is are 3, 5 and 10. So you can see the 3 points on a curve which is offer curve of India to the United Arab Emirates. This is India's offer of textile commodities to the United Arab Emirates, expecting they will give us the crude oil. So this is actually not a barter trade. This is in fact the trade is done in the market economy at giving money to the exporters, giving money giving settling the bill, import bill. This is not barter trade, but this is a measurement. This is a measurement of the gain of a country's trade, and how does it reach the equilibrium of in international trade. So we have 3 points C, S and T. These are the points measured along India's offer curve to the United States, to the United Arab Emirates, and at C, at point C, where you can see the ratio is 3 by 5. 3 by 5 means 0.6. That means terms of trade is India's terms of trade is 0.6. It is well below the base level of 100. That means India is not gaining from trade. India is losing from trade at that point, as we receive only 3 units of crude oil in return for 5 units of a textile commodity. This is the 5, 7 and 10 are the quantities of textile commodity being exported by India to United Arab Emirates at a single level of, at a relative level of price. That means at point C, India receives 3 units of crude oil, and we give 5 units of textile in return. That means the ratio is 3 by 5. 3 and 5 are in fact the quantity, not the export price and import price, but these are the quantities at a single level of price. 3 and 5 are the commodities, being exported and imported mutually by India and United Arab Emirates at a single level of price. That means at that specific level of price, India is not gaining from trade, India is losing from trade. That means this is because India's terms of trade is well below the base level of 100 or 1. This is 0.6, 3 by 5 is 0.6. Coming to the second point, that is S, where India receives 5 units of crude oil from United Arab Emirates, and we give 7 units of India's on commodity textile, then the ratio is 5 by 7. Here also our terms of trade is well below the base level of 1 or 100 percentage. 5 by 7 is around 0.7, I think 0.7, and 0.7 is well below 1. But the India's trade with United Arab Emirates has significantly improved from 0.6 to 0.7. This is a remarkable improvement, but still we are below the equilibrium level of 1. But coming to the last one, that is point T. At point T, India receives 10 units of crude oil, and in return India offers 10 units of textile commodities. So 10 by 10 is 1. That means terms of trade is 1 or 100 percentage. That means what we receive as import is equal to what we give as export. This is 10 and 10. This is the quantities of export and import at a single level of price. So that is much more important. So this is the equilibrium point in which both nations not lose from trade. That means they don't lose from international trade, since terms of trade is 1 or the offer curve point is at point T. So OE refers to the offer curve of India to the United Arab Emirates, and OG, you can see OG is the offer curve of United Arab Emirates to the to India. That means OE is India's offer curve, showing the export of India's textile to United Arab Emirates. That means that is India's supply curve to the United Arab Emirates. At the same time, OG is the offer curve of United Arab Emirates, and it is the demand curve of India and supply curve of United Arab Emirates. And when the point is P1 and P2, then terms of trade is not equilibrium for both nations. So at P1, the quantity exported, y axis shows the import commodity by India, x axis shows the export commodities by India. E bales is India's export commodity, G bales is India's import commodity from United Arab Emirates. So at P1, India's offer is big. That means OM1 is greater than P1 M1. That means India's terms of trade is well below the equilibrium level of 1. At point P, both offer curves are intersecting. That means India's terms of India receives commodity OM, that is equal to India's import. India's import is PM, India's export is PM. This is measured at a single level of price. That means terms of trade is equal to 1, and both nations are not losing from international trade. At the same time, if the international trade between India and UAE happens at point P2, where P2 M2 is India's import and OM2 is India's export, then also the nation will lose from international trade, as the terms of trade will not be in equilibrium.